stuff out the way. Okay, go ahead and load up that first song. Beautiful. The monitors are working. It's amazing what happens when you turn them on. Like the woman at the well, I was seeking for things that could never satisfy. But then I heard my Savior speaking, draw from my well that never shall run dry. Fill my cup, Lord, I lift it up, Lord. Come and quench this thirsting of my soul. Bread of heaven, feed me till I want no more. Fill my cup, fill it up and make me whole. There are millions who are seeking for pleasures that may be good or gold, but none can match the wondrous treasure that I find in Jesus Christ my Lord. Fill my cup, Lord, I lift it up, Lord. Come and quench this thirsting of my soul. Bread of heaven, feed me till I want no more. Fill my cup, fill it up and make me whole. Fill my cup, fill it up and make me whole. You know, I like this, love this time of year, but I also hate it. It makes my sinuses play games. Jay, play that second song before I get into the... These songs, like usual, these songs will have something to do with my service. But that, and I like them. Rowan, you got one. Something beautiful, something good. All my confusion him was brokenness and joy, but he made something beautiful of my love. The rebel were dreams that were lofty and noble. They were my dreams at the start, and the hope for life's best were the hopes that I had deep down in my heart. But my dreams turned to ashes, my castles all crumbled, my fortunes turned to loss. So I wrapped them all in the rags of my life and laid them at the cross. Something beautiful, something good. All my confusion, he understood. All I had to offer him was brokenness and strife, but he made something beautiful of my love. Something beautiful, something good. All my confusion, he understood. All I had to offer was brokenness and strife, but he made something beautiful of my love. But he made something beautiful of my love. If you would, in your Bibles, turn to the Gospel of John, the 10th chapter and the 10th verse. But before we get to that, you know, these two songs that I sang, the relative theme that they have is they deal with one's life. You know, one was the woman at the well, and she was seeking things that were outside of the Lord, and then he came to her and he gave her eternal life, if you remember the story. And the second song was a change in one's life. But the question I have tonight is, what is life? Have you ever just sat down and wondered, you know, after work, or just sitting there and you're just wondering, you know, man, is this all there is? Is this all there is? You know, you eat, you sleep, you work, you come home, you sit down, and there's got to be more. You know, I don't know why God put this on my heart. He did it last week, right early in the morning. I'm sitting there and I'm saying, okay, this sermon's done. And he says, Jim, I got another one for you. And I started to think. And that question just popped in mind. What is life? Is there more? Why are we here? You know, there's just got to be more to it. You know, we've been reading a lot out of Ecclesiastes lately. And I think that's part of the reason why I'm thinking this way, because Solomon was pondering this whole question. What is life? Is there more? Why am I here? He started out in the first book, second verse. He says, vanity of vanities. He says, what is the profit to a man in all his labor, which he labors under the sun? A generation passes away, a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun also arises, the sun goes down, and hurries to his place where it arose. The wind goes toward the south, and it turns around to the north, whirls around continually. The wind returns on its circuits. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place where the rivers come, there they return again. All things are full of labor. Man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. That which has been, that which shall be, and that which is done is that shall be done. And there is nothing new under the sun. He's saying, you know what? I see things going on. And Solomon was a pretty wise man. You know, he made some mistakes in his life, but he was fairly wise because God gave him that wisdom. He said, you know what? No matter what I do, it just doesn't seem like it's satisfying. You know, I can sit here and I can work every day, and you know what? There's going to be work to be done tomorrow. The sun rises, and you know what? It comes back up again. You know, there's just nothing new. He's been pondering this question. What is life about? It's got to be more than what we're seeing here on this daily basis. You know, 1,000 years later, a man shows up and he says, you know what, guys? I got something for you. He says, the thief does not come except to steal and to kill and destroy. I have come that they might have life, and that they might have life more abundantly. Well, you know, I looked at this, and I'm looking at this statement that Christ made. He says, I've come to give you life. Now, we're talking about his birth here, because it's getting into that season. And the whole purpose for Christ's being, he was born for one purpose and one purpose only. God sent him. It's the only purpose that God would come down in flesh and dwell among men. There was no other purpose under heaven or earth for God to do what he did but for this purpose, to give us life. And in order for us to have life, he had to die first. So his purpose on earth was nothing more than to be born, live that perfect life, and then to die for us, like a criminal on a tree. And that's the way they treated him. But you know, I looked at that statement. He said, I'll give you life, and life more abundantly. And you know, sometimes I look at what I'm doing, and you know, the work week that I have, and everything that I go through, and I say, you know what, Lord, I just don't see it. I just don't understand what you mean by life more abundantly. But see, the Lord says this. He says, you know, he didn't just say, I came to give you life and life more abundantly. He made a statement before that. He says, the thief cometh but to kill and destroy. He's here, Satan is here for that one purpose, to either destroy our lives or to kill us. He wants to take that life that Christ went and died on that cross for, he wants to take it away from us. You know, the thing is, first we have to understand what life is. You know, have you ever Googled the word life? Looked it up? You know, they can't come up with a definitive definition for life. I looked it up, and they have different ways of putting it. All they can say is it's the difference between this altar and this flesh is life. Philosophers have been looking at this for years, and the way they come up with it, Life is nothing more than the accumulation of one's experiences over the period of time that you're here and how you react to those experiences. That's how they define life. They say, you know what? You're going to be born, you're going to die, but all that time in the middle, everything that you've gone through and everything you experienced, and how you reacted to those, that's how you determine what your life is. Now the thing is, no two people are alike. Me and Betty could grow up in the same neck of the woods, and we could be where we are, and we could experience the same things, but we're going to have two different lives. Why? Because we're going to react different, because we are different. I'm not going to see things the same way she will. And it doesn't matter if Betty was my twin or I was her twin, we'd still have the same problem. We wouldn't live the same life. No two people are the same. The thing about life is this. If we perceive our life as a waste, it's going to be a waste. If we perceive our life as a success, it's going to be a success. How we perceive a thing is usually how it comes out. And even the Bible talks about how we're to think and how we're to react to things in life. And it never does tell us to react negatively. You got to understand that. When we start to act negatively, that's when the devil's actually, tugging at us, or one of his little minions tugging at us and pulling us in the wrong direction. God always says, hey, you know what? When you're faced with a situation, think on these things. When you're faced with this situation, turn the other cheek. When you're faced with this situation, love your brother. He never tells you to take that to the negative side. Even when we're disciplining our brethren, we're doing it out of love as a family of God. But see, that's the thing. Everybody's different. Christ made another statement when it comes to life. He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh to the Father but by me. He's not only the life, but he's the truth. And he's going to show us the truth. Not only about God, but about ourselves. Sometimes we need to understand what the truth is. He said this, he says, if you continue in my word, you are my disciples. And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. So again, I'm still asking, what is life? And what does he mean by more abundant life? Sometimes I think that, there's got to be more than eat, sleep, work, repeat. Even up here preaching, there's a point in time when you're looking at it and say, you know what? God, there's got to be more than eat, sleep, work, repeat, preach. The Lord addresses this situation. When he says, the thief cometh to kill and to destroy, he's actually giving us an idea of what we're facing. In order to determine what he meant by life and life more abundantly, we have to look at that first statement. It says, the lie that he's telling, the thing is, when the thief comes to kill and destroy, he's actually starting to make us believe a lie. The only way he can take that life that we have is if he turns us away from Christ himself. Peter says it. He says that Satan is like a roaring lion going to and fro, trying to devour us. And the only way he can devour us is if we let him. And the only way we'll let him, the only way we're gonna fall into his trap is if we believe the lies that he tells us. In this situation, in this time, when it comes to our life, and in the lives of those around us, the lie that he's telling us is that Three things will make us happy. Fame, fortune, success. You know, he tells us that, you know what, if you got money, you can have a full life. Money can buy you happiness. Did you know that? Or, you know what? If I hit it big, people are going to know my name. I'm going to be famous. You know, I can go out there and I can do something and become a famous star. Third thing is, you know what? If I work hard enough, maybe I'll succeed. I'll be a success in the business world, or whatever it is that I endeavor to do. I'll be a major success, and I'll have everything I ever wanted. You know, when, you know, as I'm at work, you know, I'm striving to succeed at what I do. However, the problem with this philosophy that the devil's throwing at us, the problem with what he's saying here, there's three problems with that. The first problem with that thing that says that, you know, fame, fortune, and success will bring us a happiness and a fulfilling life is, number one, it's true for a season. You look at these college athletes out there, they get out there and they make it big in the NFL or the NBA or the NHL, and they get that big multi-million-dollar contract. And they're on cloud nine. Because you know what? They finally succeed. They got all the money that they wanted. But you know what? It's short-lived. You know, we can become famous. We can hit that. We can write that song that everybody's listening to, and we can become famous, or we can become very successful. You know, it'd be nice if, you know, Jay's shop made $300 million a year working on automobiles. That would be successful. But you know what? The problem with these things is they're short-lived. It's temporary. Because eventually, that NFL contract runs out. You get injured. That money's going to run out eventually, unless you can find a way to keep it up. If you hit the lotto, more people who hit the lotto are broke within the first 5 years after they get it, because they went and spent it all. Or, you know, what about success? You know, in order to keep success going, you got to keep coming up with ideas to make it succeed. It just don't. It doesn't run forever. You can't live off yesterday's glory. And fame is only around as long as you're the fresh new name out there. I may remember when Miley Cyrus started out and she was Hannah Montana, and then all of a sudden her fame went downhill. She still got a little bit of fame, but it's not like it was. So the next time that, you know, the next new and fresh face, that, you know, you start to lose that. So what happens when that money runs out? What happens then? What happens when your fame runs out? What happens when your success dwindles down? What then? The devil doesn't tell you that. He just says, you know what? As long as you're getting it, you're going to be happy. It's true. Second problem I have with this is this. That, you know what? Sometimes we get bored with that fame, fortune, or success. How many times have we seen those some NFL stars, they get out there, they get that big contract, they get that multi-million-dollar deal, and they get hooked on drugs. Or they become alcoholics. Because, you know what? They got into that lifestyle, and that same high that they get from getting that contract is no longer there, so they start seeking it other places. Or businessmen, once they hit that big deal, they strike it rich, And then, they're looking for that next big deal. And they can't find it. And they turn to drugs, they turn to alcohol. The problem with mankind is we're not satisfied with things for very long. Once we get it, it's cool. Short-lived. That's why I say money is never a motivator, because it only lasts a very short period of time until you get used to having it. Then you want that bigger raise. Humans are not satisfied. Third problem I have with this is once you do get these things, it has a tendency to start changing you from the inside out. We want to live that lifestyle that we're into. How many times, I've seen it in country stars as they come up through, they say, I'm not going to change, I'm going to remain that same person I was. But yet, the next time you turn around, they're a totally different person. They've looked and they said, you know what, my husband isn't good enough for my image now, so, I'm going to get rid of him. Or my wife just isn't young and beautiful enough because, I'm a big star now, so I'm just going to get rid of her, go on to somebody else. Businessmen do the same thing. How many wives has Hugh Hefner had? Bill Gates. Donald Trump. They get all this fame and success, and you know what? People become tools. Useless. So it starts to change our character. I've always wanted to be a successful processor, but not to that extent. I want to be a successful preacher, but I don't know if I want to be a Joel Osteen or Perry Noble and have 40,000 people sitting in the stands, because I don't know if I could handle that level of success without it changing me. Only God could determine what I'm capable of doing. There are things that we shouldn't pray for, because if we get them, it might totally destroy us. That's why God says, pray my will and not thine, because I know what you're capable of handling. See, the thing is that in order to have life, we have to understand what we're facing. There's another problem that we have. Sometimes we get a little lopsided in our lives. Like I say, you know what, I work 50 hours a week, and then I come home and I'm in my office and I'm trying to read and study and I'm trying to get prepared for a sermon, and it takes up most of my time. I'm preparing songs, I'm going through video. So you know what? I'm either in a shop with 20 machines, or I'm stuck in a little 12 by 12 room at my computer doing this, and my wife's looking at me saying, who are you again? I don't know who you are. I haven't seen you in forever. So we let things in our lives get a little lopsided. We're not paying attention to what we're doing. I have very addictive personality. You guys know that. I've never hid that. I was addicted to cigarettes, I was addicted to alcohol, I was addicted to porn. I'm addicted to work. I'm a workaholic. I do nothing but eat, sleep, and work. And the Lord said, looking at me going, Jim, there's more to life than that office. Jim, there's more to life than that factory you work in. I've got more for you. But you know what? You got to do something. Paul says it. He says, let your moderation be known to all men, for the Lord is at hand. Another well-known saying, and I thought it come out of the Bible for many years until I started looking it up. In fact, nobody can understand, nobody knows where it comes from. It says all things in moderation, nothing to excess. That's the way I learned it. I always attributed it to Paul because it sure sounded like him, but you know what? It's not. So the Lord's telling us this. He says, you know what? He's saying, you know what? You got to be careful what you're praying for, because, you know, that fame, fortune, and success isn't going to work, because, you know what? It's going to be short-lived, and then, you know, the devil's going to destroy your life in it. And you can't be, you know, lopsided in your life. You have to have some sort of moderation. So, how is it that we are to live a truly fulfilling, satisfying life? What is it that Christ offers us that the world's not offering? What is it that He's telling us when He says, you know what, I've come to give you life, and life more abundant? You know, sometimes we have to pray to understand what He's saying. You know, the Lord likes to speak in parables. You know, He can say, He say, I'm going to give you life and life more abundant. How many of us really understand what that meant? I thought I did. But like I said, you know, each one of us is different. That's the problem with these questions, you know, why am I here? You know, what is life? Is there more? We're so different that the answers that they try to give us in the world are off, because, you know, they're all inclusive. Those questions are real big. It's like asking, what color are we on earth? You know, what the question just doesn't, we can't get an answer, because it's not a one answer fits all type thing. But the Lord is saying, you know what? I'm going to give you something. He's saying, you know what, today, Betty, I got the answer for you, and Al, I got the answer for you, but they're not going to be the same. Because Betty, you're totally different than Al. What would be a fulfilling life for you wouldn't satisfy Al. And what would satisfy Al would drive you crazy. But the thing is, God says, you know, I'm going to come and give it to you. But, you know, in order to find a truly satisfying life, we have to ask ourselves 3 questions at the end of the day. First thing we have to understand, we have to ask is, are we content with who we are today? Are we content with the person that we are? The second question we need to ask ourselves, are we at peace with the way we acted towards others today? You know, if we're not treating our brother right, we're not going to be living that fulfilling life that Christ wants to give us. We can't do it. Because our conscience is going to start bugging us. When you lay down and go to sleep, if you've done your brother wrong, or if you've been in a fight with your sister, and you go to lay down, your mind has a tendency to wander over and over and over, and you're going over that argument, over that discussion that you guys had that you didn't agree on. I've laid in bed many a night thinking about why it is that we had to get there. When me and Nora have an argument, we don't go to sleep. Why? Because I can't sleep. The Bible says don't let the sun go down on your anger. Since I work nights, that doesn't work for me, but, the philosophy is still there. When we argue, nobody in the house sleeps. It's just, when you go to lay down and you've had that argument, if you haven't settled it, you're going to lay there and your mind's going to go over it and over and over. Now, that doesn't lead to a very quality, fulfilling life. Third thing we need to ask ourselves, are you satisfied with who you have become to get what you always wanted? If you're striving for that success, if you're looking to better your life, are you satisfied with who you are becoming? You know, at work, you know, and when I'm working on these machines, and my boss comes to me and says, hey, Jim, did you do this? You know, this is a pretty good idea. If I'm saying, you know, and I didn't do it. And I look at him and says, you know what? I could get a little better look in my boss's eyes if I just say yes. If I lie to him and tell him I did something I didn't so that I could become more favorable in his eyes and maybe get that raise that I wanted, am I becoming the right person? You know, Jay could easily say, you know what? You know, that doohickey on that engine, that would cost you, $350. When it actually is $29.95 down at the AutoZone, which he hates. But if we're becoming somebody that we can't live with to get what we want, is it worth it? The pastor, he keeps, the last 3 sermons, he said, what profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his soul? That question has been coming through on all his sermons. Believe me, I do pay attention. But in order to get that quality life, are we truly living up to the ethics that God has given us to live to? Are we becoming more Christ-like? Are we becoming more worldly? You know, as we sit down at the end of the night and we ponder how our day went, and we're thinking about this, are we truly happy with who we've become? Christ says, I come to give you life more abundantly. And he's saying, you know what? I'm going to change you to become more like me. You know, the thing is at the end of the day, if you're looking at yourself and you say, you know what, I'm becoming a cheat, or I'm lying, or I'm doing something, and you can't answer yes to every one of those questions. If you can't say, you know what, I'm happy with myself. I'm happy with who I'm becoming. And I'm happy and peaceful with the way I've acted towards my brother. A change has to occur. A change has to occur. See, Christ offers that alternate, and that's the life he's talking about. He says, come to me, all you who labor and are heavy burden. He says, if you're not happy with your life today, come to me. But you say, Jim, you know, I've been in church for 58 years, and I know what Christ says. But maybe we're not trusting him for that life that we're seeking. If we're not happy with our life right now, we're not having that peace, maybe we're not trusting him for that. We can trust him with our soul and say, you know what, God, I love you, and I trust you with it, and I know you're giving me salvation, but sometimes we limit God and what we think he can do. You know, for years, you know, I thought God was good for salvation, but, you know, when it came to alcoholism, I didn't think he was capable of taking care of it. And God threw me in the gutter for a little while and says, now, who are you going to come to when you're sitting in that gutter? And I says, Lord, you know what? I don't know. He says, learn. God is bigger than any problem, any situation that we have in our lives today. And so often, we're not really putting him in control of it. It's like this sermon tonight. You know, when I sat and worked on it, I had it done Sunday morning, and I says, Lord, I'm good. I'm done with it. And all week he's saying, no, you ain't, because you're going to add this to it, and you're going to do this to it, and you're going to tweak this. And God's saying, you know what? I wasn't trusting him to give me the full answer until this morning. And I looked at the sermon when I walked in here, and I'm saying, you know, let's see, I got Dale, and I got Al, and I got Betty, and I got Mom, and Debbie, and who's this sermon for? Who's this sermon for? Because, you know what, these people, most of them are older than me. Some of them are younger, but most of them are older than me, and you know what, they shouldn't be having these questions if they've been in the church as long as they do. And the Lord says, you know what, Jim, you hand out 7 DVDs every Sunday. So this message may not be for them, but it could be for one of those other ones. It may not be for them, but someone in their life may need you to say, hey, you know what, you want your life to change? Come. Come. God says, you know what, if you're not at peace with yourself, He says, I have come to give you peace. What's that sermon that you preached? And it was last Sunday, I believe, where you come up with this verse, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you, not as the world gives to you. Let your heart not be troubled, neither let it be afraid. God says, I'm going to give you peace. But not the same peace of the world. See, here's the problem. The world gives you peace because it says, you know what, if I got $30 million in the bank, I can be at peace with myself because nobody can hurt me. The problem is when the stock market falls, so do they. They end up jumping out of windows. There's not very much peace in the world today. And if we look outside the doors, we can see where that peace is. This is the season where we say, peace on earth, goodwill to men. But what does that truly mean in today's language? Because there is no peace out there. The only place you can find peace is with our Lord Jesus Christ, and we all know that here. You know, when Solomon was pondering this question, remember I started out in verse 1, chapter 1, verse 2, where he says, vanities of vanity, says the preacher. The sun cometh down. He says the sun setteth and it raises in the same place. And he says the rivers fill up and then they go into the sea, but the sea is never full. And he went through this, the whole book of Ecclesiastes. He's saying, you know what? Life is so funny because it repeats itself. There's nothing new under the sun. He says, you know what, you guys think you got something new? History repeated itself because if you go back a few years, you can see where that started. There's nothing new under the sun. And Solomon says, you know what, at the end of that book, at the very end of that book, he says, let me hear the conclusion of the matter. He says, fear God, keep His commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. He says, fear God and keep His commandments. You want a peaceful, you want a fulfilling, more abundant life today? Keep His commandments. You want a Merry Christmas? You want those people that are around us to see God? Keep His commandments. The rich young ruler says, you know what? I've kept His commandments, but the problem is he didn't. There's one commandment he couldn't keep. Because he couldn't sell all that he had. His love, the first commandment says, love to God with all thine heart, with all thine soul. And he didn't. He loved his money more than he loved God. That was the problem with the rich young ruler. It wasn't that he was rich. God doesn't care if you're rich or you're poor. He doesn't care if you're black or you're white or you're yellow or you're red. He doesn't care if you're famous or not. A single person knows your name. He doesn't care who you are. He says whosoever, right? Whosoever. He says, if you want that fulfilling life, keep my command. Don't love the money. Love me. Trust me. And I will give you that life more abundant. What is that life more abundant? It's that peace, and it's that joy, and that's that solitude that we feel when we can say, you know what, God, because of you, I like who I am. Has nothing to do with anyone else. It's at the end of the day, are we happy with who we are or who we've become? You want life more abundant? Look inside. Because if we're looking inside and we can see Christ looking back, we know that, God may just say, you know what? I'm going to give you that $1 million. I may give you that $30 million, but you know what? You're going to have to give some to the church. And you know what? You're going to have to help your brother out on the street. That's what I'm giving that money to you for. But you're going to get a little bit of it. Or he might just turn around and say, you know what? You can't handle that, so you're just barely going to make it. But I will supply your needs. But you know what? Be content with what you have. That's the way Paul puts it. He says, you know what? He says, let your way of life be without love of money. He said, be content with such things as you have. For he has said that not at all will I leave you. Not at all will I forsake you. Never. You know what? If we're content, the key to a more abundant, more fulfilling life is this. It's got to be balanced. We can't be lopsided, because then we're going to get discouraged. And a lot of times the reason we get lopsided is because we're not content. We need to be content. And most of all, we have to trust God that He's going to do in our lives what needs to be done so that we're not fretting about everything. Maybe the second most favorite passage I've given out is, be anxious for nothing, but all things through supplication and prayer with thanksgiving make your requests be known to God. If we're not anxious about it, if we're keeping God in our prayers, if we're keeping in contact with Him, we'll have that full, abundant life. It's not about what we have. In today's society, life is about what we have, what we can get. Trying to keep up with the West, as he once said. That can be kind of difficult sometimes. But we're not to be keeping up with the West. We're not to be keeping up with the Evans. We're not supposed to be keeping up with anybody. We're supposed to be using what God gave us to do what God wants us to do. If you want that life more abundant, you want that more fulfilling life, and stop looking out there for it looking here. Because as long as we're trusting in this, we'll have it. I want to leave you with two verses, and I'm going to conclude with this. Hebrews 13:5. I've already said that one. And then Philippians 4:8. Remember I told you earlier, God tells us how to think. It says, finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are right, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, if there is any praise, think on these things.